Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about prompting. So, prompting is helping or aiding someone to achieve the desired response. So, anytime you are helping them find the right answer or do the behavior that you want them to do, that is prompting. So, prompting allows the learner to have success on every trial. This is called errorless learning, and it just promotes success and teaches them how to be successful in the behaviors that we're desiring for them to do. So you can prompt in different ways. We have least to most prompting, which is starting out with those less intrusive prompts and working up to more intrusive prompting. We have most to least prompting, which is starting with the most intrusive and fading it back to least intrusive. And then we have most to least and least to most with a delay, so allowing them to have that independence and then implementing the prompt. So for the different types of prompting that we have independent. So that would be something where you tell them to match the color blue. They match it with no other instruction or help, and they independently responded to you. So that's independent. Then we have verbal. So a verbal prompt is when you verbally direct them towards the correct cue. So this would be if you're telling them to sit on a chair. So you might say sit down initially as the SD, and then you might reframe it to say sit in chair, and that would be a verbal prompt. It can also be something where if it's an expressive goal, you might say, what is this? And just give them that noise so that they know that it starts with an S. Then we have visual. So a visual prompt is when you use a written word or a picture to help them find what they're looking for. So maybe you're working on an expressive goal and you say, how are you? And you want them to respond, I am good. So you write down on a piece of paper, I am good, let them read it, they know to say that. Then we have gestural. So gestural prompt is when you point to the correct response. So if you are telling them to match blue, you have the different colors laid out in front of you, you point to the blue card, they know that that is what the one they need to match to. It can also be something where you tell them to sit down and you point to the chair that you want them to sit in. That would be a gestural prompt. We then have echoic modeling. So this is when the client engages in the desired behavior after you vocally model for them. So back to our what is this example, if you say what is this, immediately followed with the full word stapler, that would be vocally modeling or echoically modeling the word that you want them to say, and you want them to respond with an echoic of saying the word stapler back to you. Then we have regular modeling. So this is physically showing them what they need to be doing. So if you're in play and you want them to engage in functional play with a train, you could put that train on a train track, drive it around and say chugga chugga choo choo to show them how to functionally engage with that toy. That would be modeling that action. Another modeling prompt would be if you're working on prepositions and you want them to put the ball in the basket, you could show them put the ball in the basket, and then they can see that you are putting it in the basket and imitate that response. The next prompt we have is partial physical. So partial physical prompting is physically guiding them to the response, but not necessarily completing that response for them. So this would be when, if you want them to match blue, maybe you just nudge their arm a little bit. Or if you want them to sit down, maybe you guide them to the chair. That would be partial physical. And then that full physical prompting is when you give complete physical guidance in order for them to complete that task. So that would be the hand over hand of matching blue, or taking them to the chair and guiding them into the chair. So that way they have to do it. There's no leeway for it not being completed. It is fully physically aided. Just some other prompting strategies that I wanted to touch on, but not necessarily part of the prompt hierarchy that I'll discuss, is positional prompting. So this is when you have your array of visuals and we want them to match blue. Maybe you move that blue visual closer to them so it's more obvious for them. And then there's partially reduced stimuli. So maybe you originally have 5 colors sitting out and you partially reduce the stimuli and you only have 3 for them to differentiate between. So now instead of having to differentiate between red, orange, yellow, green, and blue, they only have to differentiate between orange, green, and blue. And then there's the full reduced stimuli, and this is where you have the only card out that you want them to match. So you want them to match blue, only blue is in front of them. If you fully reduce the stimuli on a different task, maybe you want them to put the hat on a doll, and you have a hat and a shirt. You only give them that hat to put onto the doll. That would be completely reducing the stimuli, so only the stimuli they can use is there. So then how do we determine intrusiveness? So I like to think of intrusiveness as problem solving. So if a client has to do more problem solving, they have higher levels of problem solving. So you only partially reduce those stimuli, they still have to differentiate between, they still have to problem solve. There's lower level of staff aid, which means it's less intrusive. If the client has low levels of problem solving, you completely reduce that stimuli and there's only the one there, they only have one to pick from. That would be high levels of staff aid, and then that would be more intrusive. So that's how we determine how intrusive a prompt is. So then, looking at a sample of a hierarchy of prompting, we have independent. They did it completely by themselves. There's no intrusiveness there. Then we have verbal. So you're giving them a cue, giving them a different type of direction. They still have to think through what they need to say or do, but they have a little bit of help. Then we have visual. So you're showing them what you want them to say or do, or giving them a hint of what they should say or do, but they're still problem solving. They still have to come up with the answer. They still have to decide what you want them to do with that written cue. They still have to be able to read it to come to the conclusion. Then we have gestural, so the pointing. That's a little bit more intrusive because you're giving them the exact spot, but they still have to process. They're gesturing to that card, but what does it mean I have to do with that card? Do I give it to them? Do I match? Do I touch it? You know, they still have a little bit of problem solving there. And then we have echoic modeling and regular modeling. I put this on the same level because they are both types of modeling prompts. Just the echoic is for the more expressive goals and the regular is for more receptive goals. But you're showing them exactly what they need to do. All they need to do is imitate you. So they don't have as much processing going on there. But they can still get the right answer on their own without that physical prompting, whereas partial physical prompting, you're guiding them to it and they just have to do that last step, or they just have to finish out what they're doing. So there's not quite as much processing. You're showing them exactly what they need to do physically, and then getting them there, whereas that full physical, you're doing that action with them and for them. And then here are the references that I used, and I hope this video helped.